Thank you very much. Okay, it is really a treat to be here. I feel like I stumbled on a family reunion. It's really, really nice to see such a warm regard in the room. And I, as the head of a large locally owned business coalition, I proudly partner with my community colleges here in this region. In fact, Dr. Giovannini kindly housed us in the early years before we could grow legs. So, Local First Arizona, you may not realize, today is the largest local business coalition in North America, representing 2,700 businesses aligned in a coalition and 35,000 plus employees. We work twofold. We work to strengthen those small businesses and help them become more competitive. We help them become better community stewards. And moreover, we are creating a demand for individuals to think about how they're spending their money. We're creating a demand to make sure that there are people out there that really understand the importance of entrepreneurship. So I'm going to start by backing up just a little bit and talking about my background. This is the inside of my gallery. It's called Modified Arts, and it's located in downtown Phoenix. For those of you who aren't from this region, this street was called Roosevelt Row, and in the late 90s, it was pretty much blighted and forgotten. On this street where I opened this art gallery, there was a liquor store and a hubcap shop. Those are the two existing businesses on the road. The liquor store was technically a drive-through, only no one had a car. It was more of a walk-up. So generally speaking, the city had forgotten about this. They had turned the street lights off. There were no street sweepers on the street. And this was my second business that I started. My first business was a record store. I come from a long history of entrepreneurs. My parents were both self-employed, both sets of grandparents self-employed. All of my aunts and uncles except for one aunt, both of my brothers. So when I came home from college and said, Mom and Dad, I want to open up a record store called Stinkweeds, I was a 19-year-old kid, my parents both went, honey, that's a great idea. We love that idea. So Stinkweeds is my first business and music store, and we just celebrated 27 years. So we are located downtown, thank you. And I use Stinkweeds to springboard this. It's an art gallery, but it's also a performance space. So we have theater and film, and we're teaching young artists also how to be entrepreneurial themselves. So back to Modified Arts, here we are. I've got Stinkweeds, I've got Modified, and we're literally having events 6 or 7 nights a week. We did this for 12 years. Okay, we started this thing called First Friday. On First Friday, we would be thrilled if 150 people came to downtown Phoenix for an art reception. And we would all stand around and feel bold, It was a very, very difficult time. And about a year and a half later, after working at this by myself, another young entrepreneur came and he said, hey, how would you feel if I opened up an art gallery next door? And I jumped up and I hugged him. I jumped up and I hugged him. And he said, really? And I said, that would be the best thing ever. So now we've got 2 of us. And we're sitting there and we're promoting this thing called First Friday and collaborating in every way possible on our marketing. And then the third business came, and it was a restaurant. And they had a liquor license, and it was a little cafe with a wine bar. And then we had it. We had a reason to come down. We've got 2 galleries side by side. Now we've got this third business coming along. And I want to share with you, over 12 years, we ended up with this many art galleries, 7 restaurants. We had wine bars, coffee shops, retail space, and a light rail stop that says Arts District, right? When they originally drew the light rail in Phoenix, they were going to skip Roosevelt. So this isn't a story about me. This is a story about the power of entrepreneurship, right? We reduced crime in this neighborhood by 62%. We adaptively reused all of the building stock down there that was sitting there blighted and abandoned. 6 galleries own their own properties on Roosevelt Row, which ensures we're not going to get pushed out by increasing rents. So this is the power of what entrepreneurs can do when we link arms, and it's a powerful statement. And one thing I really want to point out here is too often we look at this and somebody will say, yeah, but that's hospitality and retail, those are low-wage jobs. That's somebody that doesn't understand the ecosystem of entrepreneurship. There's 135 jobs, sure, on the surface right there, but think about the accountants, the attorneys, the graphic designers, the web developers, the payroll service providers that are behind all of those businesses that make the economy work. We have to keep that in mind as we work to celebrate entrepreneurship. So I used those two businesses and that background to launch Local First Arizona. As Karen Michelle mentioned, we are a statewide organization, and we are working on strengthening entrepreneurship, and more importantly, strengthening the value of entrepreneurship. It's so important that you engage individuals in supporting independent businesses, because we have forgotten in this country that we are driving the economy, okay? We know that for every 2 jobs a big box creates, 3 local jobs will be lost as a direct result of independent businesses closing down and the ecosystem I just mentioned behind it also closing down. So we need to figure out how to get more people thinking about the importance of entrepreneurship. And I will also add that entrepreneurship creates prosperity for all. This is the way this country was founded, and we're moving further away from it, and I am so grateful that the community colleges are taking this torch and moving it forward, because it really, it is really what is going to bring prosperity back to the middle class in this country. So this is a picture of my staff at the Bali conference. Bali stands for the Business Alliance of Local Living Economies, and I'm pleased to say that we are hosting this conference here in Phoenix next year. We have a ton of different programs. Just to give you a snapshot of what we have built, together we have 80,000 social media followers of Local First Arizona. Our website directory is getting searched 42,000 times a month. That's not hits to our website. That's the number of people who are actually using our search box, looking for local solutions. This is how we are going to make a difference. So I want to share with you this whole concept about connection to place. How many of you are familiar with the word placemaking? Quite a few. Okay, that's great. So you can now get a degree in placemaking in the planning department. 10 years ago, I was acting on my gut instinct, and I was hearing a lot of young people tell me they wanted to leave Arizona because it didn't have any soul. They said it didn't have any soul, or it didn't have enough culture. And I thought, that's very, very interesting. Why do I feel like there's tons of connection here, tons of culture, tons of soul? Well, I was acting in a totally localized manner because I was raised in a household with entrepreneurs. So I knew my whole business ecosystem. But it all snapped for me one day, and this is a true story. This woman, we were standing in line next to one another, and she leaned into me. We were chit-chatting here and there, and she leaned in and she said, "Boy, you guys sure have made a mess out here in Arizona. You guys." And so I looked at her, I said, "Huh, you don't live here?" She said, "Oh, I live here." I said, "You haven't lived here very long?" She said, "No, I've lived here 15 years. I said, "So who the heck is you guys? You live here now." Think about that. Think about when people don't connect to the place where they live. We have a lot of that here in Arizona. In fact, you probably have them where you come from, but here what we have is a lot of folks from Chicago that won't stop telling us how great Chicago is. Admittedly, Chicago's a great town. Wouldn't argue with that. But I started thinking, why are people more connected to Chicago than here? So I did my little independent survey, and I went out and I asked everyone from Chicago why they love that town so much. And my smile grew bigger and bigger and bigger, because they told me in a million ways and in a million voices, they told me the locally owned businesses. They said the restaurants. They said the chefs. They might have said, "I love the unique neighborhoods with all the little colorful stores and the storefront." They might have said, "I've had the same barber in Chicago for 20 years. All you guys have is Supercuts," right? They might have said, "I bank at the same bank my grandparents banked at, and it makes me feel rooted to that community." It's interesting, people don't make the connection between the way they act with their commerce and their spending and how they feel about their community. Okay, so by the way, give me 15 minutes and I can find you 40 barbers. Right. We have them here too. They're just a little bit harder to find, and we also have a lot of people that aren't looking for them. So here's the irony. Fast forward to last year, and the Knight Foundation issued a huge new study that indicated that attachment to the community or connection to place is the single most leading indicator in places that have prosperity. And they even found that when people love the place they live, they're more likely to vote, they're more likely to volunteer, to give charitably. Here in Arizona, we'd have much more butts in seats at a Diamondbacks game, right? Right now, you go and 50% of the games, there's more fans in the room for the opposing team, right? So what we're doing at Local First Arizona is working to better connect people to the place where they live through entrepreneurship. And I guarantee you, this is true all the way across the country. No matter what community you're in, people will say it's the local businesses that give it its unique character and make it feel connected. So what I want to talk to you about now is how do we take this opportunity to really get people involved? We have built a grassroots movement. Some of you probably have local business coalitions in communities where you live. So what we did is we created a campaign called Shift the Way You Shop. And what we wanted to do is give people small incremental ways that they could participate and short-term wins that made them feel connected. So we started this campaign. It was based on a colleague of mine did a study in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it showed that if everyone in the community, the size of Tucson here, so roughly 600,000 people, if everyone in a community that size committed to shifting 10% of their spending from a national corporation to a locally owned business, it would create $130 million new dollars recirculating in that community. It would create 1,600 brand new jobs and $52 million in new local wages for a 10% shift. So thinking about supporting entrepreneurship, just keep in mind that just last holiday season, Americans spent $460 billion just at the holiday season. Just imagine if we spent that like we wanted to create jobs, right? We can absolutely do this. So I want to just wrap up here with hitting on two final things that we've worked really hard on. One of the things we have out here in our community is this disconnect between a lot of our lower income Latino entrepreneurs and access to capital at fair market rates. While you're here, you may start to notice some of the predatory lending that's cropped up. And I think that well-intentioned people want to shut that down, but that's really a symptom of a much greater problem, and that is a lot of that community, for cultural and other reasons, are not bankable. And so we've created an accelerator program for low-income Latino micro-entrepreneurs, completely taught in Spanish. It's 6 months worth of coursework. Here's what sets it apart. We partnered with eMoney Pool. eMoney Pool is a local entrepreneurial company that started, and by the way, they just won FinTech Startup of the Year over in Silicon Valley, Financial Tech Innovator of the Year, and they're based here in Arizona. What eMoney Pool is it takes a tanda, which is a money pool, which has been used around the world for many, many years, and it digitizes it. And it basically is if 12 people got together in a family and we each put in the same amount of money, month after month after month, each month, one person gets to take the whole kitty, right? It's a way they save money without paying interest. We digitize this. During the time they're with us in our accelerator program, they're saving in a money pool. And what we have done is forged relationships with credit unions. And when they graduate, they have a certificate of completion showing on-time payments that the credit unions are taking as an application, as a qualification to apply for credit at fair market rates. So we've graduated 28 entrepreneurs from the program who now have access to capital at just under 6% interest. When they started with us, just for perspective, these entrepreneurs were paying between 18 and 21% interest on every dime they borrow. That just perpetuates poverty. So what we're doing here is thinking entrepreneurially about meeting people where they're at and coming up with realistic solutions to make them more successful and to build prosperity across a broad spectrum. And lastly, the thing we're doing on a grassroots level to engage individuals is we started the Localist campaign, and each one of you, I hope, can shift 10% of your spending and can become a localist. Localists are people who support local independent businesses. They get engaged. We curate events for them, all kinds of fun things that they can do in their community that are unique for localists. We might take one of the most popular chefs in town and take the group of localists behind the scenes to meet that chef. We take them behind the scenes at the Desert Botanical Gardens so they can learn about all the rare species of plants that they have there. The sky's the limit. One of the things we're working on right now is that you would enter a contest as a localist to get to introduce your favorite band live on stage. So it's a wide variety of things. What we're doing is connecting people to this place because we know that if we're ever going to fix the K-12 education system in Arizona, first we have to have a community that feels completely accountable for it. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.